in indulging in us, and yeah. So, Pride and Prejudice is, of course, we're basing it off the second edition of the 1813 version, and our very own group adapted it for the stage, and so you will see a shortened version of the original story, but we hope you all enjoy it and appreciate all the volunteer students that only have their enjoyment in here and no other benefits but having fun. But please enjoy!
It is a truth, universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be upon his first entering the neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters.
My dear Mr. Bennett, have you heard that none of your parties is at last?
Indeed not.
Oh, but it is. Do you not want to know who has taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Well, my dear, you must know. Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune.
What is his name?
Bingley.
And is he married or single?
Oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls.
How so? How can it affect them?
Oh, Mr. Bennett, how could it be so tiresome? You must know that I'm thinking of his marrying one of them.
Is that his design in settling here?
Design? Nonsense. But, however, it is likely that he may fall in love with one of them. And therefore, you must visit him as soon as he comes.
I see no occasion for that.
But consider your daughters. Think of what an establishment it will be for one of them. Indeed, you must go, but it will be impossible for us to visit him if you do not.
You are over-scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to make your acquaintance. And I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of the girls.
Oh, Mr. Bennett, how could you abuse your children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves.
You mistake me, my dear. I have a high regard for your nerves. They are my dear old friends.
Ah, you don't know what I suffer.
But I hope you will get over it, and live to see many a man of 4,000 a year come into the neighborhood.
It will make no difference if 20 such shall come, since you will not visit them.
Depend upon it, my dear, that when there are 20, I will visit them all. I do hope Mr. Bingley will like it, Lizzie.
You are not in any way sure what Mr. Bingley will like, since we are not to visit him. Girls, sit down.
Oh, but you forget, Mama, that we will meet them at the assemblies. And Miss Long promised to introduce him.
I do not believe Mrs. Long will do any such thing. She has 2 nieces of her own. She's a selfish, hypocritical woman, and I have no opinion of her.
No more have I, and I'm glad to find that you do not depend on her serving you.
Quit coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake. Have some compassion on my nerves.
Kitty has no discretion in her cough. She times them ill.
I do not cough for my own amusement. When is the next ball to be, Lizzie? Tomorrow fortnight.
Aye, so it is. And Mrs. Long does not return till the night before, so it would be impossible for her to introduce us to him, for she would not know him herself.
Then, my dear, you may have the advantage of your friend, and introduce Mr. Bingley to her.
Impossible, Mr. Bennett, impossible. When I'm not yet acquainted with him myself, how can you be so teasing?
I admire your prudence. A fortnight's acquaintance is certainly quite insufficient to know what a man really is.
Nonsense, nonsense.
What can be the meaning of that emphatic exclamation? Do you consider the forms of introduction and the stress that is laid on them as nonsense? Oh, I cannot quite agree with you there. What say you, Mary? For you are a young lady of deep reflection, I know, and read great books and make extracts. While Mary is collecting her thoughts, let us return to Mr. Bingley.
I am sick of Mr. Bingley.
Oh, I am sorry to hear that. Had I known as much this morning, I certainly would not have called on him. We cannot escape the acquaintance now.
Oh, my dear Mr. Bennett. Oh, but I knew I should persuade you at last. Oh, well, how pleased I am. Girls, what an excellent father you have. Lydia, my love, I dare say you will dance with Mr. Bingley at the next ball.
Oh, I am not afraid. For though I am the youngest, I am the best of dancing.
If I get the town, one of my daughters happily settled at Netherfield, and all the others equally well married, I shall have nothing to wish for.
What might Mr. Bingley be like? Curiosity was the bane of us all. Would he be tall and handsome, dark or stately? We, Mamma and all my sisters attacked Papa with questions and suppositions, but he eluded the skill of us all. We were at last obliged to accept the second-hand intelligence of Lady Lucas, whose report was highly favorable. She called him young, handsome, extremely agreeable, and, to top the whole, he was meant to be at the next assembly with a large party. How delightful! To be fond of dancing is certainly a step towards falling in love, you know.
You see that gentleman standing over there with Miss Bingley? Well, Lady Lucas has just informed me that he is Bingley's oldest friend, a Mr. Darcy. Bingley's wealth is nothing compared to his. 10,000 a year. Isn't he a handsome, charming young man?
Certainly features that afford the compliments of many, but I dare say it is not Darcy, but Bingley that catches Jane's liking.
If I should get the chance to dance with either of them, I should think I might faint.
Quiet! They're coming over.
Mrs. Bennett,
Mr. Bingley,
he expressed his wish to become acquainted with you and your lovely daughters.
how very good of you, sir. Of my daughters, this is my eldest, Jane, and Lizzie, and Mary sits over there reading, and Kitty, and Lydia, my youngest.
Delightful. Delighted. I am absolutely delighted to make your acquaintance.
Oh, we are most honored. A man as fortunate as yourself, so genteel and proper. Now then, girls, isn't he a decent young man? Yes, and a man of such prosperity.
Yes. Well, I beg your pardon, Mrs. Bennett. May I present my friend, Mr. Darcy?
A pleasure to meet you as well, Mr. Darcy. Well, it looks as though another dance is about to begin. I hope the two of you are as fond of dancing as we are here.
Yes, quite. Miss Bennett, if you were not previously engaged, perhaps I might have the honor of this dance?
Yes, you may. I am not engaged.
you standing about by yourself in this stupid manner. Certainly much better dance.
I certainly shall not. You know how I detest it unless I'm particularly acquainted with my partner. An assembly such as this would be insupportable. Your sisters are engaged at present, and there's not another woman in the room who would not be a punishment for me to stand up with.
My word, Darcy, I would not be so fastidious as you are for a kingdom. On my honor, I've never met with so many pleasant girls in all my life, and there are several of them you see uncommonly pretty.
You are dancing with the only handsome woman in the room.
Oh, she is the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. Oh, but look, there is one of his sisters just there. She is very pretty, and I dare say very agreeable.
She is tolerable. Not handsome enough to tempt me. Feeling I have no humor at present to be slighted by young ladies who are slighted by other men. Best return to your partner and enjoy her smiles, and wasting your time with me.
My dear Mr. Bennett, we have had a most delightful evening, a most excellent ball. Jane was so admired. Everyone said how well she looked. And Bingley thought her quite beautiful and danced with her twice.
For God's sake, had he had any compassion on me, he would not have danced half so much. Oh, that he had sprained his ankle in the first dance.
I overheard Mr. Robinson's asking if Hefferney liked our parties, if there was a great many pretty women in the room, and which he thought the prettiest. His answer, immediately to the last question, oh, the eldest Miss Bennett. There cannot be two opinions on that point.
Oh, my dear, I am so delighted with him. He is so excessively handsome, and his sisters are charming women. I've never in my life saw anything more elegant than their dresses. I dare say the lace upon Mrs. Hurst's gown.
Spare me the descriptions of finery, please.
Well, what a delightful evening. Most excellent. Oh, but that obstinate man, Mr. Darcy. Had it not been for the liveliness of his companion, I could very well say the ball might have indeed been ruined. And such shocking rudeness, especially towards our dear Lizzie.
Slighted by Lizzie, did he?
Poor Lizzie, to only be tolerable?
I beg you not put it into Lizzie's head to be vexed by his ill treatment. For he is such a horrid, disagreeable man. Oh, I wish you had been there, my dear. I quite detest the man.
Miss Bingley said that he never speaks much, unless among his intimate acquaintances. With them he is remarkably agreeable.
Oh, I do not believe a word of it. If he had been so very agreeable, he would have danced more. Everybody says he is eat up with pride.
I do not mind, but I wish he had danced with Lizzie.
Another time, Lizzie. I would not dance with him if I were you.
I believe I may safely promise you, ma'am, never to dance with him.
By all that I have ever read, I'm convinced that pride is a very common failing, that human nature is particularly prone to it. Vanity and pride are different things, however. A person may be proud without being vain. Vanity relates more to what we would have others think of us, while pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves.
I could have easily forgiven his pride if he had not mortified mine. When Jane and I were finally alone, she, who had been cautious in her praise of Mr. Bingley before, expressed to me just how very much she admired him.
Oh, Lizzie, he is just what a young man ought to be. He is sensible, good-humoured, lively. Oh, and I never saw such happy manners, so much ease with such perfect good breeding.
And he is handsome, which a young man ought to be if he possibly can, his character is thereby complete.
I was very much flattered by his asking me to dance a second time. I did not expect such a compliment.
Did you not? Well, I did for you. What could be more natural than his asking you to dance again? He could not help but see that you were at least 5 times as pretty as any other girl in the room. Oh, Jane, he certainly is very agreeable, and I give you leave to like him, for you have liked many a stupider person. Oh, you are a great deal too apt, you know, to like people in general. You never see a fault in anybody.
Well, I would not wish to be hasty in censuring anyone, but I do always speak what I think.
I know you do, and it is that which makes the wonder. With your good sense, and to be so honestly blind to the follies and nonsense of the world. Oh, to be candid without design, to see the good in everyone's character and make it still better, and say nothing of the bad, belongs to you alone, dear Jane. Between my dear brother and Darcy, there is a very steady friendship, in spite of great opposition of character. Charles has the firmest reliance on the strength of Darcy's regard, and of his judgment, the highest opinion. In understanding, Darcy is the superior. My brother is by no means deficient, but Darcy is clever. He is at the same time haughty, reserved, and fastidious, and his manners, though well-bred, are not inviting. In that respect, Charles has greatly the advantage. Whereas Charles is sure of being liked wherever he appears, Darcy is continuously giving offense.
Well, I must say, I've never met with so many pleasant people, or prettier girls, in all my life. Everybody was most kind, most attentive. You don't think so?
On the contrary, I observed nothing of the kind. It was a collection of people in whom there is little beauty and no fashion.
Oh, Mr. Darcy, but did nothing fancy you?
Indeed not. I had not the smallest interest in anyone or anything.
Ah, Miss Bennett. Oh, I could not conceive of an angel more beautiful. Come now, Darcy, admit it.
I acknowledge she is pretty, but she smiles too much.
She is indeed a sweet girl. Yes, I should say I admire Miss Bennett for all her being raised in the country, and such a family. I would not object to know more of her. Therefore, brother, I give you leave to think of her as you wish.
I had at first scarcely allowed her to be pretty, looking at her without admiration. But no sooner had it made clear to my companions that she hardly had a good feature in her face, only to find it rendered uncommonly intelligent by the beautiful expression in her dark eyes. By my critical eye, I noted more than one failure of perfect symmetry in her form. But I cannot deny that her figure is light and pleasing. And though her manners be not those of the fashionable world, I am caught in her ease and playfulness. I begin to wish to know more of her.
Let's have another dance, shall we?
And the less polished societies of the world, even
Darcy, you must allow me to introduce you to this young lady. It's a very desirable partner.
Indeed, I have not the least intention of dancing. I entreat you not to suppose that I move this way in order to search for a partner.
Oh.
I would be very happy if you do me the honor of the next dance, Miss Bennett.
Forgive me if I am not inclined to dance.
Oh, my dear Miss Elizabeth, it is cruel of you to deny me the pleasure of seeing you dance. Though this gentleman dislikes the amusement in general, I'm sure he can have no objection.
I can guess the subject of your reverie.
I should imagine not.
You are considering how insupportable it would be to spend many an evening in such a manner, in such insipid society.
You are mistaken, I assure you. My mind was more agreeably engaged. I have been meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow.
Tell me, which lady has the credit of inspiring such reflections?
Miss Elizabeth Bennett.
Miss Elizabeth Bennett. I have to say I am all astonishment. How long has she been such a favourite? And pray, when am I to wish you joy? You will be having a charming mother-in-law.
A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, and love to matrimony in a moment.
Nay, if you are serious about it, then I shall consider the matter is absolutely settled.
Mr. Bingley likes your sister Jane undoubtedly, but he may never do more than like her if she does not help him on. There are very few of us who are part enough to be really in love without proper encouragement. She better show more affection than she feels if she hopes to secure him.
Secure him? Really, Charlotte?
Remember, Lizzie, that he does not know Jane's disposition as you do. Since she is secure of him, then there will be more leisure for falling in love as much as she chooses.
Your plan is a good one. Were nothing in question. But these are not Jane's feelings. She has not even known the degree of her own regard. She has known him only a fortnight. That is certainly not enough time to make her understand his character or of his regard for her.
I believe happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. Therefore, it is better to know as little as possible of the defects of the person whom you are to marry.
Oh, Charlotte, you make me laugh. But it is not sound. You know it is not sound, and that you would never act in this way yourself.
It appears Jane will not. I do wish her success with all my heart.
How had the evening passed by so swiftly? I felt as though I were but a moment speaking to Mr. Bingley before it was already time to depart. Oh, how to put to words that language only formed by a heart in love. For now, my sentiments must be content to remain hidden from all but my dearest Lizzie. We had scarcely returned home from the ball before Mamma began to recount the events of the evening, sharing with us the recent news and latest fashions from abroad. The conversation soon turned to the ramblings of Kitty and Lydia on how handsome the officers were, how finely they danced, and how they longed to see them again soon. Oh, poor Papa. Between talk of new silk and soldiers, he could only remark upon the vacant minds of his two youngest.
To think that the regiment will remain for the whole winter?
Oh, and in Meryton, only walk away. Imagine how many balls we might attend before spring.
We won't be new dresses. And to dance with all the soldiers.
I have suspected it for some time, but I am now convinced. You must be two of the silliest girls in all the country.
Well, how I admire Captain Carter. Perhaps best of all of them. I do hope we will see something of him before he goes to London.
I remember the time when I liked a red hoop myself very well, and indeed, I still do at heart.
Letter for Miss Jane Bennett.
Well, Jane, who's it from? What is it about? Make haste, my love.
Well, what does he say, dear Jane?
It is from Miss Bingley. She has invited me to dine with them today, and the gentlemen are not to be in attendance.
Dining out? That is very unlucky.
Can I have the carriage, Father?
No, my dear. You had better go on horseback, for it is likely to rain, and then we must stay all night.
Mother!
I would not have you go all that way without even seeing the gentleman. This was a lucky idea indeed.
The very next morning, I received a letter from Jane stating that she was quite unwell and that Mr. Bingley insisted upon her staying at Netherfield until she were better.
Well, my dear, if our daughter should die of this illness, it will be of great comfort to know that it was all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley, and under your orders.
Nonsense. People do not die of trifling colds. It will all be very well, as long as she stays where she is.
I must go and see her, Papa.
Is this a hint to me, Lizzie, to send for the horses?
Oh, no, indeed. I had much rather walk. The distance is nothing when one has motive.
How silly can you be as to think of such a thing? Walk 3 miles in all this dirt? You will not be fit to be seen when you get steaming.
I will be fit to see Jane, which is all that I want.
We will go as far as Meryton, if you will, Lizzie.
Yes, if we go now, we might see something of Captain Carter before we go.
Miss Elizabeth Bennet's arrival created a great deal of surprise. That she should have walked 3 miles so early in the day, in such dirty weather, and by herself, was almost incredible to Mrs. Hurst and myself. We admitted her in all politeness, and she was taken to her sister immediately. At dinner, when it was resolved that Jane was not getting any better, Charles insisted upon Miss Elizabeth's remaining at Netherfield until her sister was well. She accepted with gratitude, returning to her sister immediately after dinner had finished. I thought nothing highly of Miss Elizabeth Bennet's performance at dinner. Her manners were very poor indeed, a mixture of pride and impertinence. She had no conversation, no style, no beauty.
She has nothing, in short, to recommend her, but being an excellent walker. I shall never forget her appearance this morning. She really looked almost wild.
She did indeed, Louisa. I could hardly keep my countenance. Why must she go scampering about the country because her sister has a cold? Her hair, Louisa.
Yes, and her petticoat. Oh, I hope you saw her petticoat, brother. 6 inches deep in mud, I'm absolutely certain.
I thought Miss Elizabeth Bennett looked remarkably well this morning. A dirty petticoat quite escaped my notice.
You observed it, Mr. Darcy, I am sure. And I am inclined to think that you would not wish to see your sister make such an exhibition.
Certainly not.
To walk 3 miles above her ankles in dirt. And alone, quite alone. It seems to me to show an abominable sort of conceited independence.
It shows an affection for her sister. It is very pleasing.
I am afraid, Mr. Darcy, that this little adventure has rather affected your admiration of her fine eyes.
Not at all. They were brightened by the exercise.
Well, Miss Jane Bennett, on the other hand, really is a sweet girl, and I wish with all my heart she were well settled. But with such low connections, I'm afraid there is no chance of it. And their mother...
I think I have heard you say that their uncle is an attorney in Meryton.
Yes, and they have another who lives somewhere near Cheapside.
That is capital.
It would not make them one jot less agreeable if they had uncles enough to fill all Cheapside.
But it must lessen their chance of marrying any men of consideration. That is the material point.
Indeed.
So, coffee and a game of cards?
Miss Bennett, may I inquire after your sister?
Thank you. Jane has just gone to sleep. I believe she is improving.
I am glad. Won't you join us?
Oh, no, thank you. I assure you I will be quite delighted with the book.
Oh, you prefer to read on cards, do you?
Miss Elizabeth Bennett despises cards. She's a great reader and takes no love in anything else.
I deserve neither such praise nor such censure. I am not a great reader, and I take delight in many things.
In nursing your sister, I am sure you take pleasure, and I hope it will soon be rewarded by seeing her quite well again.
Thank you, sir.
Is Miss Darcy much grown since the spring?
I believe so. She is now about Miss Elizabeth Bennett's height.
How I long to see her again. I never met anyone who quite delighted me so much, and so extremely accomplished for her age. Her performance on the pianoforte is exquisite.
You know, it is amazing to me how young ladies have the patience to be so very accomplished as they all are. They sing, they dance, they draw, they play music, they speak French and German. And Darcy, I'm sure I never heard a young lady introduced for the first time without being informed that she was very accomplished.
I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen in the whole range of my acquaintance that I would consider really accomplished.
Oh, surely no one can really be esteemed accomplished who does not possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her address and expressions.
All this she must possess, but to all this she must yet add something more substantial in the improvement of her mind through extensive reading.
I now no longer wonder at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I now rather wonder at your knowing any.
Are you so severe upon our own sex?
Never have I met with such a woman. Never such capacity, taste, application, and elegance as you describe united.
I shall have to disagree with you, Miss Bennett.
This is the most unagreeable game ever.
Against my greatest hopes for her recovery, Jane was still yet quite ill the next morning. Oh, dearest Jane, I would wish nothing more than that you would be well.
Miss Bennett, I hope your kind means of entertainment suit you.
Yes, indeed, thank you.
Good, good.
How delighted Miss Darcy will be to receive such a letter. Dear Georgiana, pray tell her how I long to see her.
If you wish.
How pleasant it is to spend an evening in this way. I declare, after all, that there is no enjoyment quite like reading. How sooner one tires of anything than of a book. Bennett, let me persuade you to follow my example and take a turn about the room. I assure you, it is very refreshing. Would you not care to join us, Mr. Darcy?
That would disarm the object.
Whatever could he mean? I am dying to know. Do you understand him?
Not at all, but he means to be severe on us, and the surest way of disappointing him will be to ask nothing about it.
Nay, I must insist upon an answer. Mr. Darcy, delight us with your explanations.
You are conscious of the fact that your figures appear to the best advantage while walking. Therefore, I can admire you much better from where I sit.
Oh, shocking! I never heard anything so abominable. How shall we punish him?
Nothing so easy. Tease him, laugh at him.
But upon my honor, I cannot. Tease, laugh at Mr. Darcy. Impossible. He is a man without fault.
A man without fault, indeed. Well, that is an uncommon advantage. It should be a great loss to me to have many such friends, and I dearly love a laugh.
Miss Bingley has given me more credit than can be. Even the wisest and best of men may be rendered ridiculous by a person whose first object in life is a joke.
Certainly there are those who may, but I hope I am not one of them. I hope that I never ridicule what is wise and good. Follies and nonsense, whims and inconsistencies do divert me, but I own and I laugh at them whenever I can. But these, I suppose, are precisely what you are without.
That is not possible for anyone. But it has been my study to avoid those weaknesses which expose a strong understanding to ridicule.
Such as vanity and pride.
Vanity is a weakness indeed, but pride, where there is a true, strong understanding, pride will always be under good regulation. I have faults enough, Miss Bennett, but I hope they are not of understanding. My temper, I dare not vouch for. It would perhaps be called resentful. My good opinion once lost is lost forever.
Well, these are failings indeed, but I cannot laugh at it. You are safe from me.
I believe every disposition has a tendency to some particular evil.
Oh, yours is a propensity to hate everybody.
And yours is to willfully misunderstand them.
Do let us have a little music, Louisa. When Jane at last were well, we were allowed to take our leave of Netherfield, much to the resistance of Mr. Bingley, who continually worried after her health. For myself, it was with the liveliest of spirits that I departed from Netherfield, escaping the piercing eyes of Mr. Darcy and the incivility of Miss Bingley. How wonderful to be in the familiar comforts of home, though we were not welcomed very cordially by our mother, who insisted upon our staying longer at Netherfield. But our father, though laconic in his expression of pleasure, had missed us very much. He felt our absence in a loss of good sense and animation at the dinner table.
I do hope you have prepared a good dinner today, my dear, because I have reason to expect an addition to our family party.
Who do you mean, my dear?
The person of which I speak is a gentleman and a stranger.
A gentleman and a stranger? Oh, it is Mr. Bingley, I am sure. Lydia, my love, ring the bell for Hill this moment.
It is not Mr. Bingley. It is a person with which I have never met in the whole course of my life. I have received this letter from my cousin, Mr. Collins, who, when I am dead, may turn you all out of this house as soon as he pleases.
Oh, pray do not speak of that odious man. I do think it is the hardest thing in the world that your estate should be entailed away from your own children.
Yes, it certainly is a most iniquitous affair, and nothing can clear Mr. Collins from the guilt of inheriting Longbourn. But if you will listen to his letter, you may perhaps be a little softened. My dear sir, the disagreement subsisting between yourself and my late honored father always gave me much uneasiness. And since I have had the misfortune to lose him, I have frequently wished to heal the breach. There, Mrs. Bennett. My mind, however, is now made up on the subject, for having received ordination at Easter and being distinguished by the patronage of the Right Honourable Lady Catherine de Bourgh, with my next being an entail of Longbourn estate, I cannot be otherwise than concerned at being the means of injuring your most amiable daughters, and come ready to make every possible amends. And so on. Therefore, my dear, at 4 o'clock we may expect this gentleman. He seems to be a most conscientious and polite young man, and I doubt not will prove a valuable acquaintance. If he wishes to make amends, I shall not be the person to discourage him.
Though it is difficult to guess in what way he means to make amendment, the wish is certainly to his credit.
He must be an oddity, I think. I cannot make him out. There's something very pompous in his style. Do you believe him to be a sensible man, Papa?
Oh no, I think not. I have great hopes of finding him quite the reverse.
Mr. Collins was punctual to his time and was received with great politeness. Father, indeed, said little, but the ladies were ready enough to talk, and Mr. Collins seemed neither in need of encouragement nor inclined to be silent himself.
Mrs. Bennett, I must express how very fine a family of daughters you have. I had had much of their beauty, and in this instance, they must follow sort of the truth. I do not doubt that you'll see all of them in due time disposed of in marriage.
You are very kind, I'm sure, and I wish with all my heart that it may prove to be so, for else they will be destitute to none.
I am very sensible, madam, to the hardships of my fair cousins, and I could say much on the subject, but that I am cautious of peering forward and precipitate. But I can assure the young ladies that I come prepared to admire them.
You are very kind and fortuitous, sir.
As customary of a person of my position, and according to the express wishes of my very noble patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. At present, I will not say more, but perhaps when we are better acquainted.
You know,
Oh, the fine fireplace here. It reminds me nearly of the much larger ones at Rosing Park. Many of them, I should say, for their so.
Mr. Collins was not a sensible man. Altogether a mixture of pride, false civility, self-importance, and humility. His eyes were initially fixed on Jane as his future wife, but he was soon dissuaded by Mamma remarking on her very soon engagement. Lizzie, equal to Jane in both birth and beauty, soon became his next choice, much to Mamma's delight. However, he became so tiresome to Papa by following him around and talking incessantly, that Papa firmly prompted us girls to walk to Meryton with Mr. Collins.
I shall never tire of our walks to Meryton. There will always be a bonnet in the shop window that I simply must have. And the officers besides.
Oh, is that not Denny?
I say, Kitty, it is. Denny.
if it isn't Miss Lydia Bennett, I had scarce dreamed to have seen you here.
I came this very day looking for you.
Ah, may I have the pleasure of introducing you to a friend of mine. Dear Lady Bennett, Mr. George Wickham, who has just returned with us the day before from London. He has accepted a commission in our corps, and with great pleasure he will be with us for some duration.
Very good day.
A pleasure to meet you. A great pleasure, I assure you. Perhaps we shall become better acquainted during my time here.
Perhaps you shall, that you might attend the next ball. For there is no better way to acquaint oneself than at a ball and at a dance.
I should very much enjoy a ball, if there were to be such charming company as that of yours.
Ah, what a fine surprise. Miss Bennett, I was just now on my way to Longbourn with the purpose of inquiring you. After you. Mr. Darcy, accompany me. Of course, I trust your family is in good health.
Why, thank you, sir. We are all quite well. How good of you to inquire.
Yes. Ah. Well, perhaps we must be on our way then. Ah, pardon, you must excuse us. Miss Bennett, I hope we shall meet again soon. At a ball, perhaps?
I would like that very much, Mr. Bingley.
How far off is Netherfield from Meredith?
Not even a day's walk, or merely a few hours on horseback.
Indeed. I see Mr. Darcy has been visiting Netherfield. Do you know how long he has been staying there?
About a month. He is a man of large property in Derbyshire, I understand.
Oh yes, his estate there is a noble one. You could not have met with a person more capable of giving you certain information on him than myself, for I have been connected with his family from infancy. You may well be surprised, Miss Bennett, at such an assertion after seeing, as you probably did, the very cold manner of our meeting just now. Are you very much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?
Oh, as much as I ever wished to be. I have spent 4 days in the same house as him, and I find him very disagreeable.
Indeed, I believe your opinion of him would in general astonish.
Upon my word, he is not at all liked in Hertfordshire. Everybody is disgusted with his pride.
I wonder whether he is likely to remain in this country much longer.
I do not at all know, but I heard nothing of his going away when I was at Netherfield. I do hope that your plans will not be affected by his being in the neighborhood.
Oh, no, it is not for me to be driven away by Mr. Darcy. If he wishes to avoid seeing me, then he must go. We are not on friendly terms, and it always gives me pain to meet with him. His father, Miss Bennett, the late Mr. Darcy, was one of the best men that ever breathed. And I can never be in company with this Mr. Darcy without being grieved to the soul by 1,000 tender recollections. His behavior to myself has been scandalous. A military life is not what I was intended for. The church ought to have been my profession. I should at this time have been in possession of a most valuable living, if not for that reason.
Indeed.
Yes, the late Mr. Darcy was my godfather, and excessively attached to me. He meant to provide for me amply through his will, but when the living fell vacant, it was given elsewhere.
But how could that be? How could his will be disregarded?
There was just such an informality in the terms of the bequest as to give me no hope from law. A man of honor could not possibly have doubted the intent, but Mr. Darcy chose to doubt it.
Oh, this is quite shocking. He deserves to be publicly disgraced.
Sometime or other, he will be. But it shall not be by me. Till I can forget his father, I can never defy or expose him.
But what can have been his motive? What can have induced him to behave so cruelly? I had not thought Mr. Darcy so bad as this, though I have never liked him. I supposed him to be despising of his fellow creatures in general, but did not believe him to descend to such malicious revenge and injustice and inhumanity as this. Your words have given me much to think on, Mr. Wickham.
Pray, let yourself not be concerned over the countenance of Mr. Darcy. We have spent too long pondering him. Your acquaintance, Miss Bennett, I must say, has been very much agreeable with me. I do hope we shall meet again soon.
Perhaps so, Mr. Wickham. The prospect of meeting with Mr. Wickham again, I must admit, was quite pleasing to me. Soon seemed quite likely, for there was no doubt in my mind of his attending the ball the next evening. With such a man as Wickham, whose manners recommended him to everyone, one could not imagine him missing such an assembly. Everything he did was done well, and everything he said was said so gracefully. While conversing with him, one could be easily lost in the passage of time. Upon my arrival at the ball the next evening, I searched in vain for him among the clusters of red coats, only distracted by Mr. Collins requiring me for the first 2 dances. My mind now fully occupied with Mr. Wickham's absence, I relayed to Jane and Charlotte what had passed between him and myself.
Is he here then, the man of which we secretly speak?
No, Mr. Wickham was called away on business. But perhaps his business would not have called him away just now if he had not wished to avoid seeing a certain gentleman here. I dare say you will find Mr. Darcy very agreeable. Oh, heaven forbid, Charlotte! That would be the greatest misfortune of all. To find a man agreeable that one is determined to hate.
Dear Lizzie, do not be a simpleton and allow your fancy for Wickham to make you appear unpleasant, especially in the eyes of a man of 10 times his consequence.
I know not how to believe that Mr. Darcy could be so unworthy of Mr. Bingley's regard, but for the words to come from a man of such amiable appearance as Mr. Wickham.
I can much more easily believe that Mr. Bingley was imposed on than that to believe that Mr. Wickham made such a history of himself. All these names, facts, all said without ceremony. If it be not true, let Mr. Darcy contradict it. But there was truth in his looks.
It is difficult indeed, but take care, Lizzie. Do not let your feelings for Wickham prevail over your good sense.
It is distressing. One does not know what to think.
I beg your pardon. One knows exactly what to think of Mr. Darcy.
May I have the honor of the next dance, Miss Bennett?
I had not. I thank you, yes. The musicians are quite excellent this evening.
Yes, indeed.
It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. Perhaps you may remark on the size of the room, or the number of couples.
Perhaps.
Very well. That reply will do for the present. I may remark that private balls are much pleasanter than public ones. But now we may then be silent.
You always talk like rural ball dancing.
Sometimes. One must talk a little, you know. It would look entirely odd to be silent for half an hour together. And yet, for the advantage of some, conversation ought to be so arranged that they may have trouble in saying as little as possible.
Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case? Or do you imagine you are gratifying mine?
Both, for I have always seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are both of an unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to say anything unless we expect to amaze the whole room.
That is no very striking resemblance of your own character, I am sure. You and your sisters often walk to Meryton.
Yes. When we were there, we were just meeting a new acquaintance.
Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners as to be always making friends. Whether or not he's equally capable of keeping them is less certain.
He has been so unlucky as to lose your friendship, and in a manner he is likely to suffer from all his life.
I am most highly gratified indeed, my dear sir. Such fine dancing is not often seen, and I especially hope it to be repeated when a certain fine event shall take place. Oh, what congratulations will then flow in. But let me not interrupt you further from the bewitching converse of this young lady.
Sir William's interruption has made me forget what we were talking of.
I do not believe we were speaking at all. Sir William could not have interrupted two people who had less to say for themselves.
Well, what think you of books?
Books? Oh, no, I am sure we never read the same, or not with the same feelings.
I'm sorry you think so. But if that be the case, we shall at least have no want of subjects. We may compare our different opinions.
No, I cannot talk of books in a ballroom. My head is always filled with something else.
The present always occupies you in such scenes?
Yes, always. Mr. Darcy, I remember you said once that you hardly ever forgave. That your resentments, once created, were unappeasable. You are very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created?
I am.
And never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice?
I should hope not. To what do these questions tend?
Merely to the illustration of your character. I am trying to make it out.
And what is your success?
I do not get on at all. I hear so many different accounts of you as to puzzle me exceedingly.
I should wish that you would not sketch my character at present, for I fear the performance would do no credit to either of us.
But if I do not take your likeness now, I may never get another opportunity.
I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours.
So, Miss Eliza, I hear you are
quite delighted with George Wickham. Your sister has been talking to me about him and asking me 1,000 questions. And I fear the young man quite forgot to tell you, among his other communications, that he was the son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's steward. Let me recommend you, however, as a friend, not to give implicit confidence to all his assertions. George Wickham has treated Mr. Darcy in a most infamous manner. I do not know all the particulars. I do know that Mr. Darcy was not in the least to blame. And though my brother could not well avoid including him in his invitation to the officers, he was excessively glad to find that Wickham had taken himself out of the way. I pity you, Miss Eliza, for this discovery of your favourite's guilt. But really, considering his descent, one could not expect much better.
His guilt and his descent appear by your account to be the same, for I have heard you accuse him of nothing other than being the son of Mr. Darcy's steward, and I can assure you of that he informed me himself.
I beg your pardon. Forgive my interference. It was kindly meant.
Insolent girl! Oh.
Cousin Elizabeth, I have just found out by a singular accident that there is now, in the room, a near relation of my lady patroness. Oh, who would have dreamed of my meeting a nephew of Lady Catherine de Berg in this assembly? I am most thankful that the discovery is made in time for me to pay my respects to him, which I am now going to do, and trust he will forgive my having not done it before.
Mr. Collins, you will not introduce yourself to Mr. Darcy.
Indeed I am. It will be in my power to inform him that her ladyship was quite well. Yes, do it.
Mr. Collins? No, you mustn't. Mr. Collins! No. Is there anything we can do to prevent him?
I have just discovered Mr. Darcy in relation to my patron's Lady Catherine de Berg, and you must understand that nothing can prevent me from informing you that her ladyship was an excellent help when the relation was revealed to me. Of course, I must apologize for not praising you sooner, but I had not expected I would uncover a relation at this assembly.
And you are?
Oh, I am William Collins, Mr. Darcy. I am but a humble clergyman who her ladyship has bestowed a sizable living in Hunsford. No one could be as grateful as her gift as I. She's often been most generous in all ways. She's often afforded me a visit to Rosings Park. There's nothing quite like the grounds for a fair state, don't you think? Of course, owing all of its elegance to her ladyship's brilliance and sense of taste. You, as her relation, I'm sure, must carry that same sense of affability. Therefore, where no one can
excuse me.
How great a pleasure.
My dear Lady Lucas, I cannot be but so fond of a match as Jane and Mr. Bingley. Oh, he is such a charming young man, and of such good fortune, and 3 miles from Longbourn. Oh, I expect to see a very soon engagement. Such a union will throw them in the way of other rich men.
You have played exceedingly well, child. But you have delighted us long enough. Let the other young ladies have a chance to exhibit.
Lord, how tired I am.
Made an agreement to expose themselves to as much ridicule as possible during the evening, they could not have played their parts better, with finer success. That Mr. Bingley did not notice made me happy, but that Mr. Darcy and Miss Bingley should have such an opportunity at ridiculing my relations was bad enough. My only relief was that Mr. Darcy never ventured to speak with me again for the rest of the evening. Not soon enough we were home. The next morning, however, bore no respite for me.
Miss Bennett, may I inquire your interest in soliciting your fair daughter Elizabeth for the honor of a private audience in the courts of this morning?
Oh, yes, of course. I'm sure she'll be very happy. I'm sure she'll have no objection. Kitty, come, my dear. I want you upstairs. Come along. Come. Jane, you as well. Come along.
Believe me, dear Miss Elizabeth, that I have your respected mother's permission for this dress. You can hardly doubt the reason of my discourse. Almost as soon as I entered the house, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. But before I run away with my feelings on the subject, perhaps I should state my reasons for marrying. My reasons for marrying are, first, I think it's a right thing for every clergyman to set the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, I'm convinced that it will add very greatly to my own happiness. And thirdly, which perhaps I ought to have mentioned earlier, that it is the particular recommendation of my very noble patroness. Mr. Collins, she said, you must marry. Choose properly. Choose a genteel woman for my sake, and let her be an active, useful sort of person. The fact is that, being, as I am to inherit Longbourn as my estate after the death of your honored father, I cannot satisfy myself without resolving to choose a daughter from amongst his. Therefore, my fair cousin, nothing left remains but for me to assure you in the most animated language the violence of my affection.
You are too hasty, sir. You forget that I have made no answer. Let me do so now without further loss of time. Accept my thanks for the compliments you are paying. I am very sensible in the honor of your proposals, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than to decline them. You could not make me happy, and I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world that could make you so.
My cousin Elizabeth, my situation in life, my connections with the family of the Berg, my relationship to your owner, all circumstances highly in my favor, and you should take it into further consideration that in spite of your manifold attractions, that it is by no means certain another offer of marriage may ever be made.
Mr. Collins, I thank you again and again for the honor you are doing me in your proposals, but to accept them is absolutely impossible. My feelings in every respect forbid it. Do not take me now as an elegant female intending to plague you, but as a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart.
You are uniformly charming, and I'm convinced that when sanctioned by the express authority of both of your excellent parents, that my proposals will not fail of being acceptable.
Mr. Bennett! Mr. Bennett! You're wanted immediately downstairs.
What can be the meaning of all this racket?
You must come and make Jane. Lizzie, marry Mr. Collins, for she vows she will not have him, and if you do not make haste, he will not have her.
I have not the pleasure of understanding you. Of what are you speaking?
Of Mr. Collins and Lizzie. Lizzie begins to say she will not marry Mr. Collins, and he begins to say he will not have her.
And what am I to do on the occasion? It seems a hopeless business.
Speak to Lizzie about it yourself, and insist upon her marrying him.
Bring her to me. Let me speak with her.
Lizzie! Lizzie!
Come here, my child. I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage. Is it true? Very well. And this offer of marriage you have refused.
I have, sir.
I see. We now come to the point. Your mother insists upon you marrying Mr. Collins. Is that not so, Mrs. Bennett?
Yes. Well, I will never see her again.
An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day forward, you must be a stranger to one of your parents. your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins. And I will never see you again if you do.
Oh, Mr. Bennett!
Engaged to Mr. Collins? My dear Charlotte, impossible!
Why should you be so surprised, my dear Lizzie? Do you think it incredible that Mr. Collins should be able to procure any woman's good opinion? Because he was not so happy as to succeed with yours.
You know that's not... Yes, I admit that I was surprised, but if Mr. Collins has been so fortunate as to procure your affections, then I wish you all imaginable happiness.
See what you are feeling. You must be surprised, very much surprised, so lately as Mr. Collins was wishing to marry you. But when you have time to think it over, I hope you will be satisfied with what I have done. I'm not a romantic, you know. I never was. I ask only a comfortable home. And considering Mr. Collins' character, connections, and situation in life, I am convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as there as most people can boast upon entering the marriage state.
Undoubtedly.
Between Elizabeth and I, there was a mutual silence on the subject, and she was persuaded that no real confidence could ever subsist between us again. Her disappointment in me made her turn with fonder regard to her sister, for whose happiness she daily grew more worried, as Mr. Bingley had now been gone a week and nothing more was heard of his return. Day after day passed without bringing any other tidings of him. Even Elizabeth began to worry, not that Bingley was indifferent, but that his sisters would be successful in keeping him away. As for Jane, her anxiety under the situation was of course painful, but whatever she felt, she was desirous of concealing. However, no such delicacy restrained their mother.
Mr. Bennett? Mr. Bingley must surely return any day now. I am quite impatient about the matter. Oh, you must confess that if he does not return soon, Jane should consider herself very ill-used. Oh, and that outward Charlotte Lucas. I can't believe that she could ever be the mistress of this house, that I should live to see her take her place in it.
My dear, do not give way to such gloomy thoughts. Let us hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may outlive you.
That my dear mother had more command over herself. She can have no idea the pain she causes by continual reflections on Mr. Bingley. But I will not repine. He shall be forgot, and we shall all be as we were before. Stop it, Lizzie. I see the way you look at me. He shall live in my memory as the most amiable man of my acquaintance. But that is all. I have nothing to either hope or fear, and nothing to reproach him with. Thank God I have not that pain. A little time, therefore. I shall certainly try to get better.
Dear Jane, you are too good. I feel as though I have never loved you as much as you deserved. Truly, there are very few people whom I really love, and still fewer of whom that I think well. The more I see of the world, the more I am dissatisfied with it. Moreover, what little dependence may be placed on the appearance of merit or sense. I have met with too strong an instance in Charlotte's marriage to Mr. Collins. It is disagreeable. In every view, it is disagreeable.
Lizzie, you do not take into account differences in situation or temper. Consider Charlotte's character.
Yes, but you know that Mr. Collins is a pompous, narrow-minded, silly man. You know that as well as I do. And you must feel as well as I do that the woman who married him cannot have any proper sense.
Lizzie, that is unkind. ashamed by seeing them very happy together.
Yes, you're right.
Jenny! Aunt and Uncle Gardner have come.
And look, our cousins, they are just down the road.
Yes, I do hope they brought presents.
Oh, if we go now, we might be able to meet them there.
Let's.
I had best attend to the children.
Dearest Lizzie, I should have known I might find you lost in a book.
My dear aunt, how good of you to come.
It is so good to see you, Lizzie. While we are alone, I wish to speak with you, honestly, on the letter I received from you about Mr. Wickham. Your partiality for him was clear. You are too sensible a girl, Lizzie, to fall in love merely because you are warned against it, and therefore I am not afraid of speaking openly. Please be on your guard. Do not involve yourself in an affection which the want of fortune would make so very imprudent. I have nothing to say against him. He is a most interesting young man. But as it is, you must not let your fancy run away with him. You have a good sense, and we all expect you to use it.
Dear aunt, you need not be under any alarm. I will take care of myself, and of Mr. Wickham too. He shall not be in love with me if I can help it.
Elizabeth, you are not serious. You mustn't humor yourself on such a subject.
I beg your pardon. Allow me to try again. At present, I'm not in love with Mr. Wickham. But, beyond all others, he's the most amiable man I've ever seen, though I see the imprudence of it. I should be so very sorry to be the means of causing any of you unhappiness, but how am I to be expected to be wiser than so many of my fellow young people? Or how am I to know that it would be wise even to resist? All that I can promise you, therefore, is not to be in a hurry. When I am with him, I will not be wishing. Upon my honor, I will try and do what is the wisest, and I hope now that you are satisfied.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, truly, for your guidance.
Of course, my dear. Lizzie, while we are still alone, there is one last thing I wish to speak to you about. How would you like to accompany us on a tour of the hill country this summer? We have not yet determined how far into the wilderness it shall take us, but perhaps to the lakes.
Oh, my dear aunt! What joy, what felicity! Ah, what are young men to rocks and mountains? What hours of joy we shall share!
Good one.
Lizzie's pleasure at visiting the lakes was very closely matched by my own, as I was soon to head to London in hopes of seeing Mr. Bingley. That joy was soon dissipated, however, as I began to suspect that Lizzie had been right about Miss Bingley all along. At least I shall no longer be deceived by her. When I returned to Longbourn, Mr. Wickham was again in the country, but his apparent partiality towards Lizzie seems to have faded in favour of another, a Miss King, whose charm had grown tremendously with the acquisition of £10,000. Lizzie seemed to bear this without material pain, and did not seem to wish ill towards either Mr. Wickham or Miss King. However, Kitty and Lydia took his defection much more to heart than we did. They are young in the ways of the world, and do not yet understand that even handsome young men must have something to live on. Lizzie was soon invited to Hunsford by Charlotte, along with Charlotte's father and younger sister, Maria. At first, Lizzie did not want to go, but her continued absence from Charlotte, as well as her disgust of Mr. Collins, seemed over time to fade, and she began to look forward to the trip with pleasure. When she arrived, she was received with all pleasure, and was immediately showed about the house, Mr. Collins commenting on every furnishing and closet, with praise for every suggestion made by Lady Catherine de Bourgh on how it should be situated.
Lady Catherine, may I present my father, Sir William Lucas, and my sister Maria, and this is my friend, Miss Elizabeth Bennett.
A pleasure. Have the changes I ordered to your estate been completed, Mrs. Collins? I really believe you ought to listen more to my suggestions on its management. Your friend here appears to be a very genteel, pretty kind of girl. For your father's estate
Miss Collins, is entailed upon Mr. Collins, I think. For your sake, Mrs. Collins, I am glad of it, for I see no reason for entailing estates from the female line. It was not necessary in Sir Louis de Burgh's family. Do you play and sing, Miss Bennett?
A little.
Oh, then sometime or other we shall have to hear you. Our instrument is a capital one, probably far superior to... do your sisters play and sing?
One of them does.
Why do not all learn? The Miss Williams all play, and their father has not so good an income as yours. Do you draw?
Oh, no, not at all.
What? None of you?
Not one.
That is very strange. And you 5 daughters. Do you?
We would like to go to London for the Masters, but my father hates London.
Has your governess left you?
We never had a governess.
What? No governess? I've never heard of such a thing. 5 daughters raised up in a home without a governess? Why, your mother must have been quite a slave to your education.
I can assure you that was not the case.
Then who taught you? Who attended you? Without a governess, you must have been neglected.
Compared with some families, I believe we were. But those of us who wish to learn never lack the means.
Aye, no doubt, but that is what a governess will prevent. And had I known your mother, I would have advised her most strenuously to engage one. There are many families in which I have been the means of providing in such a way. Are your sisters out, Miss Bennett?
Yes, ma'am, all.
What? All? All 5 at once? And you only the second? That is very strange. Your sisters must be very young.
Yes, my youngest is not yet 16. Perhaps she is full young to be much in company. But really, ma'am, I believe it very hard upon younger sisters that they should not have their share in amusement and society simply because the elder do not have the means nor inclination to marry early. The last born has just as much of a right to the pleasures of youth as the first. Besides, I do not think it would promote delicacy of mind or sisterly affection.
Upon my word, you speak your mind very decidedly to such a young person. Pray tell, what is your age?
With 3 younger sisters all grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to own it.
You need not be more than 20. You need not conceal your age.
I am not 21.
Mr. Darcy and Colonel Fitzwilliam have arrived.
Oh, is it really my nephews?
Indeed it is, madam. With Easter approaching, I thought it would be a great idea to bring some additional family to here at Rosings.
What a fine surprise for all of us here.
The grounds of Rosings Park are as nice as always.
I am so glad you noticed, and I hope your attachment to them greatly increases. I pay particular attention to every detail of their upkeep.
Yes, indeed. Miss Bennett, I trust your family are in good health?
Yes, indeed, thank you. My sister has been in town these last 3 months. Have you never happened to meet her there?
I was not so fortunate as to meet with Miss Bennett.
Why, you must be the famed Elizabeth Bennett. A pleasure to meet your acquaintance.
Pleasure to meet you as well, Colonel Fitzwilliam. But I would wish to know the origin of my renown.
Why, my cousin, Mr. Darcy, speaks a great deal about you.
Oh, surely he delights in condemning my every flaw.
Well, it's quite the opposite. I hope you're enjoying your stay here in Herefordshire. I do believe there's no place more agreeable.
Yes, indeed. The journey to Rosings Park is very nice, thank you.
Excellent. Say, I hear your fondness of music and literature. Perhaps you could play for us before you leave.
Oh, well, if you insist.
Indeed I do.
Very well. in all the state to hear me. I assure you I am not alarmed, for my courage always rises at every attempt to intimidate me.
I've had your acquaintance long enough to know you find great enjoyment at professing opinions which are not your own.
Your cousin will teach you not to believe a word I say. I am so very particularly unlucky in meeting with a person so able to expose my true character. It is very discourteous of you, Mr. Darcy, and it is provoking me to retaliate and expose things that will shock your relations.
Pray,
I'm not afraid of you.
What do you accuse him of? Tell me, how does my cousin behave among strangers?
The very first time I saw him was at a ball, where he danced only 4 dances, though gentlemen were scarce, and more than one young lady was in want of apartment.
I had not at the time the honor of knowing any lady beyond my own party in the assembly.
Ah, true, and no one can ever be introduced in a ballroom.
Perhaps I should have judged better, but I feel I am ill qualified to recommend myself to strangers.
Ah, shall we ask why a man of sense and education deems himself ill qualified to recommend himself to strangers?
Because he will not give himself the trouble.
I have not the talent which some possess of conversing easily with strangers. I cannot catch their tone of conversation and appear interested in their concerns, as I often see done.
I do not play this instrument as well as I would wish to, but I have always taken that to be my own fault, for I do not take the trouble of practicing.
You are perfectly right. No one, you have employed your time much better. No one admitted to the privilege of hearing you could think anything wanting. Neither of us perform to strangers.
Miss Williams, come here, please. I wish to show you a commission I had ordered of Anne.
You must go. Come on, come on. Come visit with the lady. Oh!
How very suddenly you all quitted Netherfield last November, Mr. Darcy. I hope that Mr. Bingley and his sisters were well when you left London.
Yes, perfectly so. I thank you.
I understand that Mr. Bingley has no intention of returning to Netherfield again.
I've never heard him say so, but yes, it is very likely he will spend very little of his time there in the future.
If he means to be but little at Netherfield, it should be better for the entire neighborhood if he should give up the place entirely.
I should not be surprised if he were to give it up as soon as any eligible purchase offers should arise. The Collinses have a very comfortable house. I believe Lady Catherine did a great deal to it when Mr. Collins first came to Hunsford.
Ah, yes. She could not have bestowed her kindness upon a more grateful object, I am sure.
Mr. Collins is very fortunate in his choice of wife.
Yes, I suppose so, but in a prudential light, it is a good match for her as well.
Yes, I think it would be very agreeable to be settled within so easy a distance of one's friends and family.
An easy distance, do you call it? It is merely 50 miles.
What is 50 miles of good road? Yes, I think it's a very easy distance indeed.
I should never have considered the distance as one of the advantages of the match.
Well, that is surely evidence of your attachment to Hertfordshire. Anything beyond the very neighborhood of Longbourn would appear far.
Near and far, relative terms. A woman may be settled too near her family.
Yes. I think you would not want to be settled too near Longbourn, I think. If you'll excuse me.
Dear Elizabeth, what can be the meaning of this? He must be in love with you. Impossible, Charlotte. Really, it cannot be. It is impossible. on a walk within the Rosings Park when I soon found myself surrounded by a delightfully secluded grove of trees. I felt quite content and alone in my thoughts, only to unexpectedly stumble upon Mr. Darcy. I felt all the ill chance and misfortune that brought him there, and to take care that it should not happen again, told him that it was a favourite haunt of mine. But that he should return a second and even a third time, still very odd. He even insisted upon walking me back to the parsonage, which distressed me greatly, though he never said a great deal. The next day, when I was reading a letter from Jane in the grove, instead of meeting with Mr. Darcy, I saw Colonel Fitzwilliam walking up to me.
Oh, I did not know that you walked this way, Colonel Fitzwilliam.
Indeed. I make the tour of the park every year. I tend to call it at the parsonage.
Oh.
Would you like to join me?
I would like that very much, thank you. Do you certainly leave Kent on Saturday?
Yes, if Darcy doesn't push it off again. I'm at his disposal. He handles the business as he pleases.
Oh, I know no one who enjoys the great power of choice more than Mr. Darcy. I believe he called you down here with him simply to have someone at his disposal. Are you at all acquainted with the Bingleys?
The Bingleys?
Yes.
Yes. I know a little of them. Their brother is a very gentlemanlike man, a good friend of Darcy.
Oh. Mr. Darcy takes great care of Mr. Bingley.
Yes, care of him. I do believe he does take care of him. I heard him say that he saved his friend from the inconvenience of the most imprudent of marriages.
Did Mr. Darcy give a reason for his interference?
Well, I believe there are some objections to the lady. Miss Elizabeth, are you okay?
Yes, I simply do not know why Mr. Darcy should have had a say in what means his friend was to be happy.
Well, perhaps. But it would lessen the triumph of my cousin very greatly.
With Jane herself, there could be no possibility of objection. She is all goodness and loveliness. Her mind excellent, her manners improved. Oh, Jane, if you would have known what little reason you have had to suffer so, what schemes have been in the way that have prevented your happiness. Oh, dear Jane, in a little while I shall be with you. What a comfort that would be. Mr. Darcy.
Miss Bennett, how is your health?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm very glad to hear it. In vain I have struggled. It will not do. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. I pray you will accept the acknowledgement of all I feel and have long felt for you. Even from the very beginning of our acquaintance, I've come to look at you with a tenderness and admiration. But with those feelings arose in me a battle against my will, my reason, and I hardly need add my better judgment. The relative situation of your family, the inferiority of your connections, prompted apprehension and anxiety in me, which long prevented any acknowledgement of my regard. Indeed, it was always an obstacle to inclination. Such a connection would be seen as incomprehensible in the eyes of my relations, and admittedly against my own better judgment. But yet I burn for you with an admiration and regard. And
and in spite of my endeavors, I find my affections impossible to conquer. Therefore, Miss Bennett, relieve my suffering, accept my hand, and consent to be my wife.
I believe in cases such as this, it is customary to express a sense of obligation towards the sentiments and feelings avowed, however unequally they are returned. But I cannot. I have never desired your good opinion, and you have certainly bestowed it most unwillingly. I am sorry to be the cause of pain for anyone, but it was unconsciously done, and I hope will be of short duration. Your feelings, which you tell me have long prevented the acknowledgement of your regard, can have little trouble in doing so after this short explanation.
And this is all the reply I'm to expect. I might wish to be informed why, with so evident effort at civility, I'm rejected.
I might as well ask why, with so evident a desire of offending and insulting me, you choose to tell me that you like me against your will, against your reason, and even against your very character. Was this not some excuse for incivility if I was uncivil? Oh, but I have other provocations. Had not my feelings been decided against you, do you think that any consideration would tempt me to accept the man who has most willingly caused the heartache of a most beloved sister? I have every reason in the world to think ill of you. You dare not deny that you have been the principal, if not the sole means of dividing them from each other and involving them both in misery. Can you deny that you have done it?
I have no wish of denying that I did everything in my power to separate my friend from your sister, nor that I rejoice in my success. Was him I've been kinder than towards myself.
But it is not merely this affair on which my dislike is founded. Long before it had taken root, my opinion of you was formed when I heard a history of you from Mr. Wickham and your dealings with him.
You take an eager interest in that gentleman's concerns.
Who that knows what his misfortunes have been can help but feel an interest in him.
Yes, his misfortunes. His misfortunes have been great indeed.
And of your infliction. You have reduced him to his current state of poverty and have withheld the advantages required of him. You have taken away his independence that was his right. You have done all this, and yet you treat the very mention of his misfortune with contempt and ridicule.
And this is your opinion of me. My faults by this calculation are heavy indeed. But perhaps these offenses might have been overlooked had not your pride been hurt by the honest confession of the scruples which long prevented my gaining any serious regard. Had I concealed my struggles and flattered you, but disguise of any sort is my abhorrence. Nor am I ashamed of the feelings I related. They were natural and just. Do you expect me to rejoice at the inferiority of your connections, or congratulate myself on hope of relations whose condition in life is so decidedly beneath my own?
You are mistaken, Mr. Darcy, if you believe that the mode of your declaration had any other effect on me other than it had spared me the concern that I might have had in refusing you, had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner. You could not have offered your hand to me in any possible way that would tempt me to accept it. From the very earliest moments of our acquaintance, I was led in the fullest belief of your arrogance, of your conceit, and your selfish disdain for others. And I had not known you a month before I knew that you are the last man in the world that I could possibly marry.
You have said quite enough, madam. I perfectly comprehend your feelings and have now only to be ashamed of what mine own have been. Forgive me for having taken up so much of your time, and accept my best wishes for your health and happiness. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We will now take a 15-minute break, and then we will rejoin to do the second part of our play. If you purchase the True Thespian ticket, then you can pick your stuff up at the ticket booth, but we also are selling posters and t-shirts and stickers and other things that you might be interested. But if not, please meet us back here in 15 minutes for the second part. Thank you.
Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy. I scarce believe it possible. The implications of such an offer are not unnoted. It would be the means of securing my family's future. But to accept a man who has most willingly caused the heartache of a most beloved sister, and one who has allowed his friend to be reduced to such a state of poverty, is impossible. What arrogance and self-servitude. I need more time alone with my thoughts. Perhaps a walk in the woods will comfort me.
Be not alarmed, madam, on receiving this letter, of it containing any renewal of those offers which were last night so disgusting to you. If in this explanation I relate feelings which are offensive to you, I can only say that I am sorry. I had not been long in Hertfordshire before I saw that Bingley preferred your elder sister to any other young woman in the country. I observed, however, that your sister looked on Bingley without any peculiar regard, and that however amiable her temper, her heart was not likely to be easily touched. I did not believe her to be indifferent because I wished it. I believed it on impartial conviction.
Impartial conviction, indeed.
If I have been mistaken and inflicted pain on her, your resentment of me has not been unreasonable. However, my objections to the marriage go further. The situation of your family, though objectionable, was nothing in comparison to the total want of propriety so frequently, so uniformly betrayed by your mother, your 3 younger sisters, and occasionally even your father. Therefore, I became determined to separate my friend from your sister, and as Bingley has a stronger dependence on my own judgment than on his own, it was not difficult to convince him of her indifference. Therefore, there is but one part of my conduct on which I do not reflect with satisfaction. It is that I concealed from him your sister's being in town. Perhaps this concealment was beneath me, but it is done, however, and it was done for the best. On this subject I have nothing more to say, and no other apology to offer. With respect to that other accusation of having injured Mr. Wickham, I can only refute it by laying before you the whole of his connection with my family. Mr. Wickham is the son of a very respectable man whose good conduct inclined my father to liberally support him at school. My father hoped the church would be his profession. As for myself, it is many, many years since I have first observed the total lack of principle and utter void of restraint in his behaviors. My own excellent father died about 5 years ago, and in his will he recommended a valuable family living should be Mr. Wickham's as soon as it was vacant. Mr. Wickham soon wrote that having resolved against the church, now intended on studying the law. I wished rather than believed him to be sincere. But regardless, I acceded to his proposal. Therefore, he resigned all claim to the assistance in the church and the living, and accepted a return of £3,000. All connection between us seemed now dissolved. For about 3 years, I heard little of him. But when the living fell vacant, he now absolutely resolved on being ordained and desired the living. You will hardly blame me for refusing him when I had already given him more than his due in compensation for it. After my refusal, every appearance of acquaintance was dropped. How he lived, I know not. But last summer, we met again.
in the most painful of circumstances, which I soon wished to forget. Last summer, my sister went to Ramsgate and also went to Mr. Wickham, undoubtedly by design. Georgiana was persuaded to believe herself in love and to consent to an elopement. She was then but 15 years old. I joined them unexpectedly a day or two before the intended elopement, and Georgiana, unable to bear the idea of grieving a brother whom she looked up to as a father, acknowledged the whole scheme to me. You may imagine what I felt and how I acted. Mr. Wickham left immediately. His chief object was unquestionably my sister's fortune of £30,000, but I cannot help supposing that the hope of revenging himself on me was a strong inducement. His revenge would have been complete indeed. This, madam, is a faithful narrative of every event with Mr. Wickham, and if you do not absolutely reject it as false, you will, I hope, at least acquit me henceforth of cruelty towards Mr. Wickham. I will only add, God bless you, Fitzwilliam Darcy.
This cannot be true. This must be false. What a humiliating discovery. Oh, yet how just a humiliation. I, who had prided myself on my discernment, how despicably I have acted. Had I been in love, I could not have been more wretchedly blind. But it is vanity, not love, which has been my folly. Pleased by the preference of one, and offended by the neglect of the other, I have courted ignorance and driven reason completely away. Till this moment, I never knew myself. How many things have happened, and how many things I shall have to conceal. Stationed in Meryton, but what would result from Brighton and a whole camp full of soldiers?
A whole camp full of soldiers.
I remember the time when I myself was very attached to an officer 25 years ago. I thought it should have broken my heart. I cried 2 days together when Colonel Miller's regiment left to go away.
I'm sure it will break my heart. Only think what a miserable summer we shall have.
Aunt Phillips is sure that a bit of sea bathing would do me a great deal of good.
Yes, I long to go sea bathing.
A little sea bathing would set me up forever.
And yet, I am unmoved, without the slightest intention of yielding. I'm glad you are come back, Lizzie. I'm glad you are come back, Jane.
Well, don't we have some news for you, Lizzie? Can you guess what about?
No. It is excellent news.
Capital news.
And about a certain person we all like. It is about dear Wickham. Mary King has gone with her uncle to Liverpool. Gone for good. Wickham is safe.
Perhaps we may say that Mary King is safe.
Well, she's a great fool for going away if she really liked him.
Well, I do hope there was no strong attachment on either side.
Certainly not on his.
I'm sure he never cared 3 straws about her. Who could about such a nasty, freckled little thing?
Shouldn't you like to go to Brighton, Lizzie?
Indeed not. I should not.
I confess that the pleasures of Brighton would have no charms for me. I should infinitely prefer a book.
Lydia?
Foster inviting me to accompany her and the Colonel to Brighton.
I cannot see why Mrs. Forster couldn't have invited me as well. Though I'm not her particular friend, I deserve to be there just as much as she, for I am 2 years older.
Ha! Ha! Now you two ought to all congratulate me on my good fortune.
Indeed, you must remember that father has not yet given his approval.
That is where you are wrong.
What?
Go talk to him yourself. I can already imagine the sea of scarlet surrounding me.
Lydia will never be content until she has exposed herself in some public place, and with so little inconvenience or expense to her family as in the present circumstance.
If you were only aware, Papa, of the very great disadvantage to us all that has already arisen from Lydia's unguarded and imprudent manner.
Already arisen? What? Has she frightened away some of your lovers?
Indeed, you mistake me, Papa. But you do not know that because of Lydia's wild manner, our respectability in the world is affected.
Forgive me for speaking plainly, Father, but if you do not take the trouble of checking her now, she will soon be beyond the reach of the men.
Yes, her character will be fixed as the most determined flirt that has ever made herself or her family ridiculous.
Oh, Father, and you know how people follow wherever Lydia goes.
Oh, don't you know that they will be despised and censored wherever they go, and that they will carry their sisters along with them with their disgrace? Ugh.
Do not make yourself uneasy, my child. Wherever you and Jane are known, you are sure to be respected and valued, even with a couple, or if I may say 3 very silly sisters. We shall have no peace here at Longbourn if Lydia does not go to Brighton. Colonel Forster is a sensible man, and luckily she is too poor to be an object of prey to anyone. Let us hope that this improves her character.
It was fortunate that I had something to wish for. I looked forward to the fast approaching tour of the lakes with my uncle and aunt, only to be told that our trip must be cut short due to some unforeseen business of my uncle's. I should have to content myself with Derbyshire. But that was Mr. Darcy's county. May I rob it of a few petrified spars without his perceiving me?
My love, should you not be like to see a place which you have heard so much? A place, too, with which many of your acquaintances are connected. Yes, it is Darcy's estate, but Wickham spent all of his youth there.
I should confess I have no business at Pemberley. I should feel very unwelcome. And I must say, after going through so many great houses, I'm rather tired of them, and I no longer find interest in fine carpets and satin curtains.
If it were merely a house, richly furnished, I should not care about it myself, but the grounds of Pemberley are delightful. They have some of the finest woods in the country.
Follow me now into the dining parlor.
Oh, a fine estate, so handsomely fitted up.
And of this place I might have been mistress.
Lizzie, come see this portrait. He is a rather fine gentleman, is he not?
Oh no, that is the son of my late master's steward, Mr. Wickham. He has now gone into the army, but I am afraid he has turned out very wild indeed. And that is my master, and very like him too.
It is a handsome face, but Lizzie, you can tell us whether it is like him or not.
Oh, does the young lady know Mr. Darcy?
A little, yes.
And he not a handsome gentleman, ma'am?
Yes, very handsome indeed.
I am sure I know none so handsome.
Is your master much at Pemberley?
Not so much as I could wish, sir.
If your master would marry, you might see more of him.
That is true, but I do not know when that will be. I do not know who's good enough for him.
It is certainly to his credit that you say so, I am sure.
Yes, ma'am, but I speak only the truth, and all will say so who know him. I have never known him to speak a cross word in my life, and I have known him since he was only 4 years old. But then, I have observed that they who are good-natured when children are good-natured when they grow up. And he always was the sweetest-hearted, most generous-hearted boy in the world.
His father was an excellent man.
Indeed he was, and his son will be just like him. He is the best landlord and the best master. Now, I must leave you to the gardens, for the grounds truly are most marvelous.
This fine account of him, it is not quite consistent with his behavior towards our poor friend.
Perhaps we were deceived.
That is not very likely, I would think.
Miss Bennett,
Mr. Darcy,
I had not expected to see you here. Your family are in good health?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
And how long have you been visiting Derbyshire?
A few days.
And where are you staying?
The inn at Lambton.
Yes, of course. And your family are in good health? Like your parents and sisters?
Yes, all of us are quite well, thank you.
Excuse me.
He is excessively handsome.
Very much like the portrait.
Why did we ever come? We must leave at once. What do you think of me?
What's wrong, Lizzie? What did he say?
Well, he inquired after our family and he was perfectly polite and civil and... I don't know what to think.
You seem to be not quite yourself.
I must apologize for not greeting you properly before.
Yes, Mr. Darcy, the grounds of Pemberley are delightful and charming in every way.
I'm so glad you approve of it. Your praise is rarely bestowed and therefore more worth to earn. Would you do me the honor of introducing me to your friends?
Oh, yes, of course. Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, this is Mr. Darcy. They are my uncle and aunt, Mr. Darcy. My uncle is an attorney in Cheapside.
Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
And you, sir?
Do you care for fishing, Mr. Gardner?
Indeed I do.
Well then, while you are in the area, you ought to fish in my trout stream as often as you choose, or the ponds if you prefer. I'd be happy to provide you with any of the fishing tackle you might need. I could show you the best spots. Why don't we go there right now, if you would like?
Very good, sir.
If you'll pardon me for one moment.
He is infinitely superior to anything we had expected.
Yes, and his behavior towards us is very polite and unassuming.
There is something a little stately in him, but it is confined to his air, and it is not unbecoming. I believe I can say that though some people may have called him proud, I have seen nothing of it.
Yes, I can say that his behavior towards us is much surprising, very polite and attentive.
Your surprise matches my own, I assure you. I have never seen him as pleasant as he was today. I cannot imagine why.
Can you not?
Mr. Darcy, allow me to explain. We were assured of your absence before we came here. Your arrival was quite unexpected.
Madam, please do not make yourself uneasy. That was my original intent, but business brought me a few hours ahead of the party. They will join me tomorrow, and among them are those who claim an acquaintance with you. Mr. Bingley and his sisters.
Oh.
There is also one other person in the party who more particularly wishes to be made known to you. Would you mind if... Do I ask too much to introduce my sister to you during your stay here at Lambton?
Oh, indeed, I would like that very much.
Would you like to come into the house and take some refreshment?
Oh, no, indeed. We must be going now. Till tomorrow, then?
Till tomorrow, then. Mr. and Mrs. Gardner? Miss Bennett?
Mr. Darcy had such a charming way about himself, such manner and state that should be highly praised. One might ask, what should account for such attentions? Surely there can be no other reason than a sort of partiality for my niece.
Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, Miss Bennett, may I present my sister, Miss Georgiana Darcy.
Pleasure to meet you. Likewise. I have heard a great deal about you.
And I about you.
Miss Bennett, Mr. Bingley is just down the street and would also like to wait upon you. Is that acceptable to you?
Oh, yes, yes, of course.
Very good.
Miss Darcy, I understand that you are very fond of music and that you play the pianoforte very well.
Oh, not very well, but I am fond of it. My brother tells me that you play and sing as well, Miss Bennett. I should dearly love to hear it.
Oh, you are too kind.
Miss Bennett,
Mr. Bingley.
how do you do? I trust your family is in good health.
Oh, yes, indeed, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. It has been a very long time since we had the pleasure of seeing each other. About 8 months, I believe. Yes, I have not seen you or your sister since the 26th of November, when we were dancing together at Netherfield. Are all your sisters still at Longbourn?
Yes, indeed, all. Oh, all except Lydia, who visits friends in Brighton.
Miss Bennett, my sister would like to speak to you about something.
Miss Bennett, my brother and I would be very honored if you, your aunt and uncle would join us for dinner tomorrow at Pemberley.
Oh. We would be very happy to attend.
Good, good. Excellent. Miss Bennett, it will give me great pleasure to see you again and to hear more after your Hertfordshire friends.
Yes, of course.
Hey, Miss Eliza, are not the militia removed from Meryton? They must be a great loss to your family.
Indeed, I know not to what you infer.
Come now, you must know I am implying about Mr. Wickham.
Oh, you must excuse me. Miss Darcy, would you not care to join me?
How very ill Miss Elizabeth Bennett looks this morning, Mr. Darcy. I never in all my life saw someone so much altered as she is since the winter.
Yes, she has grown so brown and coarse.
Louisa and I were agreeing that we should not have known her again.
Indeed.
I perceive no other alteration than her being rather tanned. No miraculous consequence of traveling in the summer.
I think that she looks
For
rather...
my own part, I must admit I never saw any beauty in her. Her face is too thin, her complexion has no brilliancy, and as for her eyes, which have sometimes been called fine, I can see nothing extraordinary in them. And in her air altogether, there is a self-sufficiency without fashion. I recall, Mr. Darcy, your saying, she, a beauty, I would assume call her mother a wit.
Yes, but that was only when I first saw her. For it is in many months since I considered her one of the handsomest women of my acquaintance.
Mind if I do not go on a walk with you?
Of course not. We will return now.
Thank you. Oh, it is no wonder that Jane's first letter was redirected, for she wrote the directions very ill. I must find him at once.
Mr. Darcy, man.
I beg your pardon, sir. I must find Mr. Gardner at once. I have not a moment to lose. I'm so sorry.
What is the matter? Please, I will not detain you, but let me, or let the servant go instead. You are unwell. You cannot go yourself. Hello there.
Yes, sir.
Please fetch Mr. Gardner from the... immediately.
Wait.
Please, let me fetch the maid, or is there nothing you can take? Is there nothing I can get you? Truly, you look very ill.
No, indeed, thank you. There is nothing the matter with me. I'm quite well. I've received some very dreadful news from Longbourn. It cannot be concealed from anyone. My sister has left all her friends, has eloped, has thrown herself into the power of Mr. Wickham. They have left together from Brighton. You know him too well to doubt the rest. She has nothing that could possibly tempt him to. When I could have prevented it, I who knew what he was, had his character been known, this could not have happened. Oh.
I'm grieved, shocked. But is it certain, absolutely certain?
Yes. They were traced nearly to London, but not beyond. They left together from Brighton on Sunday night. They have not gone to Scotland.
Well, what has been done? What has been attempted to recover her?
My father has gone to London, and my sister writes for my uncle's immediate assistance. I hope we will not be off within the half an hour. I hope we will be off soon. But what's there to be done? Oh, I know that nothing can be done. Oh, how is such a man to be worked upon? And how are they even to be discovered? Oh, I have not the least bit of hope. Oh, had I done what I ought, but I was afraid. Oh, wretched mistake.
I am afraid you have been long desiring my absence. This unfortunate event, I fear, will prevent my sisters having the pleasure of seeing you at Pemberley today.
Yes. Please give our apologies to the sister. Tell her that urgent business calls us home immediately. Conceal this unhappy truth for as long as you can. I know it will not be long.
You can rest assured of my secrecy. Farewell.
I will never see him again. Oh, Jane, what news? What news has been heard about Lydia?
We have had no news, but now my dear uncle is here. I do hope all will be well.
But how is Mama? How are you? How are you all?
Mamma is tolerably well, but still keeps to her room. Kitty and Mary are good, thank heavens.
But how are you? Oh, dear Jane, this has not been good for you. You look pale. Oh, Jane.
Oh, now that you are here, I am perfectly well.
Hello, my dears. At last I am home.
Oh, Papa, what sorrows you must have endured.
Say nothing of that. Who should suffer but myself? It is my own doing, and I want to feel it.
You must not be so severe on yourself, Papa.
No, Lizzie. Let me for once in my life feel how I have been to blame. I am not afraid of being overcome by the impression. It will pass away soon enough.
Do you believe them to be in London?
Yes. Where else can they be so well concealed?
Lydia has always wanted to go to London.
She is happy then, and her stay there will likely be of some duration. Lizzie, I bear you no ill will regarding your justified advice to me last May, and considering the event shows some greatness of mind.
Oh, Lizzie, Mama would like to see you upstairs.
She keeps to her room, does she? Good. It lends such an elegance to misfortune. Another day, I will do the same. I will sit in my library, in my nightcap and powdering gown, and make as much trouble as I can. Or I may defer it until you run away.
I will not run away, Papa. If I should ever go to Brighton, I will behave much better than Lydia.
You go to Brighton? I would not trust you so near it as Eastbourne. No, Kitty, I have at last learned to be cautious, and you will feel the effects of it. No officer is ever to step foot in this house again, nor even to pass through the village. Balls will strictly be prohibited unless you stand up with one of your sisters, and you are never to stir out of doors until you have proven that you can spend at least 10 minutes of every day in a rational manner. Well, do not make yourself unhappy. If you are a good girl for the next 10 years, I will take you to a review at the end of them.
Oh, Papa! What news? What news have you had from our Uncle Gardner?
Yes, I have had a letter from him.
And of the news, is it good or is it bad?
What good is there to be expected? But perhaps you would like to read it. Read it aloud, Lizzie, for I hardly know myself what it is about.
My dear brother, at last I am able to send you some tidings of my niece, for I have seen them both.
Then it is as I always hoped, they are married.
Read on, Lizzie.
I have seen them both. They are not married, nor can I find there was any intention of being so. But if you are willing to perform the engagements which I have ventured to make on your side, I hope it will not be long before they are. Even with the dire circumstances of Mr. Wickham's gambling debt, I am happy to say there will be some little of my money, even when all his debts are discharged, to settle on my niece. Heaven forbid!
Read on, Lizzie.
All that is required of you is to assure your daughter her equal share of the £5,000 inherited on your death and an allowance of £100 per annum. Send back your answer as fast as you can. I shall write again soon. Yours, etc., Edward Gardner. Will he really marry her?
Perhaps Wickham is not so undeserving as we thought him to be.
And have you replied to his letter?
No, but it must be done.
They must marry, yet he is such a man.
Yes. Yes, they must marry, but having the satisfaction of prevailing upon one of the most worthless young men in England. There is nothing else to be done.
Is it going to be much, Papa?
Wickham's a fool if he takes her for a farthing less than £10,000.
£10,000? How is half such a sum to be repaid?
I had best go right to my brother.
My uncle soon wrote that Lydia and Mr. Wickham were now married. Mr. Wickham was found to have left the militia and was to join the regulars in the north. How Mamma lamented that Lydia should be so far separated from her friends in Brighton and her family in Longbourn. The only consolation for her poor Mamma was that the new Mr. and Mrs. Wickham should visit before they went away. Papa at first rejected their welcome entirely, but by the good nature of Jane and the reasoning of Elizabeth, he was convinced to admit them. When the carriage arrived and Lydia, the new Mrs. Wickham, alighted from it, none of us, save for Mamma, was pleased to see them.
Oh, Lydia, I missed you so dearly.
Well, I never missed you. Seems but a fortnight to me. Nay, Mrs. Wickham, how delightful that sounds. I wish to hear everyone of our acquaintances say it.
Oh, but my dear Lydia, you live such a way off, must you?
Oh, Lord, yes. I shall like it beyond anything. You and Papa and all my sisters must come visit us. We should be in Newcastle all the winter.
I should like it beyond anything.
Ah, Jane, you must go lower now, and I must take your place, for I am a married woman. Mrs. Wickham. I wish you could have all been there, and been my bridesmaids, but I suppose we're too impatient to wait another day, nor could any hospices be scribed for their duties. My dear Wickham was excessively handsome in his regimentals. He is the best in the world. Lord, I nearly forgot to tell you, my uncle, who was to give me away, gave me such a fright, he was nearly late to the ceremony, beyond an hour when we could not have been married. Though, I recollected later on that, had he not arrived, it wouldn't have been a big deal, for Mr. Darcy would have done just as well.
Mr. Darcy, at your wedding?
Oh yes, he was there with Wickham, you know, and oh Lord, I nearly forgot. I wasn't to say a word, and I promised him so faithfully. What will Wickham say? It was to be such a secret.
If it was to be such a secret, say not another word on the subject.
Oh, yes, certainly.
Thank you, for should you want to know, I would certainly tell all, and then Wickham would be so cross.
Oh, my dear aunt. You may readily comprehend what my curiosity must be to know how Mr. Darcy, so wholly unconnected with any of us and a stranger to our family, should have been amongst you at such a time. Pray, write instantly, and let me understand it, unless it must remain in the secrecy which Lydia seems to think necessary, and then I must endeavour to be satisfied with ignorance.
My dear niece, if you are really ignorant of the part that Mr. Darcy has played, then I must enlighten you. On the very day that I returned to Longbourn, your uncle received a visit from Mr. Darcy, informing him that he found your sister and Mr. Wickham. He had gone directly to London in search of them. He felt he bore the entirety of the blame. Nothing was to be done, but he did not do it himself, and he would bear the entire expense. Your uncle was forced to yield, and instead of being allowed to be one of use to his niece, was forced to bear only the credit of it. Mr. Darcy secured the marriage by paying off Wickham's extensive gambling debts. He arranged everything himself, even attending the wedding, as Lydia informed you. I believe I have now told you everything. Will you be angry with me, my dear Lizzie, if I take this opportunity of saying how much I like him? He wants for nothing but a little more liveliness, and that, if he marries well, his wife may teach him. Pray forgive my presumption, or at least do not punish me by excluding me from Pemberley. Yours very sincerely, Aunt Gardner.
Do I interrupt your solitude, dear sister?
You certainly do, but it does not follow that the interruption should be unwelcome.
I should be sorry indeed if it were. We were always good friends.
True.
I was surprised to see Darcy in town last month. We passed each other several times. I do wonder what he could be doing there.
It must be a very particular reason that brought him to town this time of year.
Did you see him while you were at Lambton?
Yes, he introduced us to his sister.
Oh, and how did you like her?
I liked her very much.
When last I have heard that she is uncommonly improved within the past year. When last I saw her, she was not very promising. I am glad you like her, and I hope she will turn out well.
I dare say she will. She has gotten over the most trying age.
Did you perchance go by the village of Kimpton?
I do not recollect.
I ask because that is the living which I ought to have had.
Ah, how should you have liked writing sermons, Mr. Wickham?
Exceedingly well.
Ah, I hear on good authority that there was once a time where sermon making was not so palatable to you, that you had actually declared your resolution of never again taking orders from anyone. Come now, Mr. Wickham. We are brother and sister, you know. Let us not quarrel over the past.
Come, my dear Wickham. Goodbye to you all.
Oh, Lydia, my love, when shall I see you again?
Oh, Lord, not 2 or 3 years, perhaps.
Write to me very often, my dear.
As often as I can. Married women never have much time for writing. My sisters may write me. They will have nothing better to do.
Adieu, and till I have the honor to meet again, farewell.
He simpers and smokes and makes love to us all. I am prodigiously proud of him, and I defy even Sir William Lucas to produce himself such a son-in-law.
Mr. Bingley is just up the road, and there's a gentleman with him. Who could it be, Mama?
I am sure I do not know.
It looks just like that man that's usually with him. Mr. What's his name?
Mr. Darcy. And so it is. Well, any friend of Mr. Bingley is always welcome here. But I must say I hate the very sight of him. Mr. Bingley, you're very welcome here.
It has been a long time.
Ah, yes, it has been a very long time since you've been gone. I began to think you would never going to come back, that you might have quit the place.
Well, here I am.
Yes? Yes, here you are. Well, how very good it is of you.
Shall we sit down?
Yes.
Are you to be long in the country, Mr. Bingley?
A few weeks, I believe, Miss Bennett.
Well, Mr. Bingley, when you have finished killing all of your own birds, I beg that you come to our house and kill as many birds as you choose on Mr. Bennett's manor. I'm sure he will be happy to oblige you.
Why, thank you very much.
Would you like to stay with us for dinner? You would be most welcome.
Oh, I must confess we are previously engaged, and soon we must be off to a meeting in town.
Well, I hope next time we shall be more like.
I would be particularly happy at any time, any other time, that is, that we are not previously engaged.
Can you come tomorrow?
That would be lovely. Yes, thank you.
If he came only to be silent, grave, and indifferent, why did he come at all? If he no longer cares for me, why be silent? Teasing man. How foolish I was to expect a renewal of his love. I should think no more.
That this first meeting is over, I feel perfectly easy. Now I know my own strength and will no longer be embarrassed by his coming. We shall meet as common and indifferent acquaintances.
Indifferent acquaintances, indeed.
Stop it, Lizzie, you mortify me. Do not talk so. I am perfectly content that he never had any design upon my affections.
Jane, take care.
Lizzie, you cannot think me so weak as to be in danger now.
Oh, I think you are in very great danger of making him in love with you as much as ever.
Come quick, be quick. Smile, Jean, smile. Mr. Bingley, how very good of you to come so early. We did not expect you until midday.
Indeed it is early. I do not mean to impose. I could just go.
Well, you are very welcome here nonetheless.
What is the matter, Mamma? Why do you keep blinking at me? What am I to do?
Nothing, child, nothing. I did not wink at you. Why would I wink at you? Well, now that you mention it, I do have something I wish to speak to you about. Come with me. Lizzie, you as well. Come on.
Mamma.
Come. We may as well leave them by themselves, you know.
Miss Bennett. From the moment we met, you have enthralled me, captured my heart in a way none have before, nor could I believe ever would after. And I must admit, I was painful. I was led to believe you were indifferent to me, and I assure you, it is only the strongest persuasion of such that kept me from returning to you from London. Miss Bennett, I love you, and my greatest error was but not confessing this to you. But now, would you forgive me this error and do me the honor of becoming my wife?
Mr. Bingley. Yes, of course.
Your father.
Well, 'tis too much. It's by far too much. Oh, I'm the happiest creature in the world. I do not deserve it.
Jen, no one in the world deserves so much as you.
I am so happy for you. Oh, he has gone to Papa already. I must immediately go to Mamma.
Yes.
Oh, to know that I will make my family so happy. How can I bear such happiness?
And this is to be the end of her torment. Oh, the happiest, wisest, most reasonable end.
Where is your sister?
She has gone upstairs to be with our mother. I dare say she will be down soon.
I suppose I shall soon call you sister.
Yes, indeed. Oh, I am truly delighted for you both.
Thank you very much. Till tomorrow then.
Tomorrow, Mr. Bingley.
Farewell.
Jane, I must congratulate you. You ought to be a very happy woman. You are a good girl, and I doubt not that you two will do very well together. You are both so complying that nothing will ever be resolved on. So easy that every servant will cheat you, and so generous that you will always exceed your income.
Exceed their income? Mr. Bennett, what are you talking of? Oh, my dear Jane. Oh, how pleased I am. Oh, but I knew it would be so. I knew you could not be so beautiful for nothing. Oh, 2 daughters. Married.
think, Lizzie, when he went to London last November, he really loved me. And nothing but the greatest persuasion of my indifference could have kept him away. Oh, and to cap it all, when I went in spring, he did not even know I was there.
I suspected as much, Jane, but how did he account for it?
Well, he does not know the particulars, but he thinks it only to be a misguided error. I must confess, I do believe it must be his sisters that deceived him. But when they see how happy we are together, they must learn to be contented, and perhaps we can go back to being good friends. Although I do not think it can ever be as it once was.
Ah, Jane, that is the most unforgiving thing I have ever heard you say. I am so very proud.
If only we could see you so happy. If only there was such a man for you.
Oh, if you gave me 40 such men, I could not be as happy as you. Till I have your disposition, I cannot have your happiness. But perhaps, if I am very lucky, I may in time meet with another Mr. Collins.
Good gracious. If that disagreeable Mr. Darcy is not coming here again with our dear Bingley, oh, what can he mean as to be so tiresome by coming here all the time? I had no notion of him disturbing us with this company. Oh, Lizzie, what shall we do? You must go for a walk.
A very good day to you all. What a lovely day it is.
Yes.
Good day to you too, Mr. Bingley.
Mrs. Bennett, have you no more lanes hereabouts in which Lizzie may lose her way again today?
Perhaps Kitty and Lizzie can show Mr. Darcy the way to Mount Oakham. It is a nice long walk, and I'm sure he has never seen the place before.
I am sure that would do wonderfully for the rest of us, but it would be too much for poor Kitty. Won't it, Kitty?
Oh, indeed. I would much rather stay at home.
I profess a great curiosity to see the view from the mount.
Mr. Darcy, I am a very selfish creature, but for the sake of giving relief to my own feelings, you must allow me to thank you for the unprecedented kindness you have shown towards my sister. As soon as I had known it, I was most anxious to tell you how gratefully I felt it.
I'm sorry, exceedingly sorry that you have been informed of what may, in a mistaken light, give you much uneasiness. I did not think Mrs. Gardiner was to be so little trusted.
You must not blame my aunt for this discovery. It was Lydia's thoughtlessness that first indicated your involvement, and as you know, I could not rest until I knew the particulars. Oh, allow me to thank you again and again in the name of all my family for that generosity that induced you to bear such mortifications for the sake of discovering them.
You will thank me, but to be for yourself alone. For your family owes me nothing. As much as I respect it, I believe I thought only of you. You're too generous to trifle with me. If your feelings are what they were last April, then tell me so at once. My wishes and desires remain as they were.
My feelings, it is difficult to imagine what they were then. My understandings and sentiments have undergone so material a change that it is quite plausible to say they are quite the opposite. I am now able to accept your affection with the sincerest gratitude and pleasure.
You know not how you fill my heart with joy and relief. Even from the first moment that we met, each time we spent in each other's company was both a pleasure and a torment. How I hoped for your change of heart. And there was no greater desire for myself than to see you grow to carry the same desperate affection that I carry for you. And now there is nothing in the world that could make me happier than I am at this moment. I would have you know that we are indebted to my aunt for our current good understanding. She came to me directly after her visit to you at Longbourn. She was determined to acquire my promise to never propose to you. She related the substance of your conversation with her, dwelling on everything she believed would aid you and will aid me in convincing me. Even including your obstinate refusal to promise to reject my proposal. Her ladyship was quite unlucky that the effect was quite the reverse of what she intended. It taught me to hope in a way that I had scarcely ever allowed myself to hope before. I know enough of your disposition to know that had you absolutely decided against me, you would have admitted it to her openly.
Oh, yes, you know enough of my frankness to believe me capable of that. Oh, after using you so abominably to your face, you could not see how I could have any scruple in abusing you to all your relations.
What did you say that I did not deserve? For though your accusations were ill-founded, my behavior to you at the time was unapprovable. I can hardly think about it without abhorrence. Your rebuke, so well applied, I shall never forget. Had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner, you know not how those words have tormented me. But I must confess that it was some time before I could give them their justice.
Oh, indeed. I did not intend for those words to be felt in so strong a way or to make such an impression.
I can easily believe it. You thought me devoid of every proper feeling. But the turn of your countenance I shall never forget. You said that I could not have addressed you in any possible way that would induce you to accept me.
Oh, indeed, do not repeat what I said then. The person who said those words and the person who is receiving them are so completely different that all the circumstances surrounding them ought to be forgotten.
Your feelings arise from innocence. But as for mine, it is not so. I have been a selfish being all my life. As a child, I was given good principles, but left to follow them in pride and conceit. My parents, though good themselves, allowed, encouraged, and almost taught me to be selfish and overbearing, to care for those only within my own family circle, and to think of all the world as beneath me in both good sense and worth. What would I be if not for you? Such I was from 8 to 8 and 20, and such I still might be, but for you, dearest, loveliest Elizabeth. You taught me a lesson, though hard at first, but most important. By you, I was properly humbled. You showed me how ineffective were my pretensions to please a woman worthy of being pleased.
They walked on, not knowing in what direction. There was too much to be thought, to be felt, and to be said for attention to any other objects. And after several miles walking in a leisurely manner, they discovered upon looking at their watches that it was time to be at home. On the journey back, Elizabeth knew rather than felt herself to be happy. She anticipated the reaction of her family upon learning of her situation. She knew that none but Jane liked him, and was afraid that with the others it was a dislike too strong to be altered.
I will go talk to your father.
Oh, Lizzie, where can you have been walking to? Mr. Darcy and yourself have been gone for many hours, and it is nearly dark.
Oh, I must confess that I hardly noticed. Oh, Jane, how desperately I wish to open up my heart to you, but oh, I am fearful of the result. Not just from you, but the rest of our family.
Lizzie, you know I could never, ever betray your trust. We are sisters of the closest kind. Our bond is not that easily broken.
Yes. Well, on our walk, Mr. Darcy indicated to me that his affections for me have not changed. He renewed his addresses and I accepted them.
Engaged to Mr. Darcy? Oh, you must be joking. No, you cannot deceive me.
Jane, this is a wretched beginning indeed. If you do not believe me, then nobody shall. No, but indeed, I am in earnest.
But you must be joking. I know how much you dislike him.
Perhaps I did not always love him so much as I do now. But where there is a good memory, it should not be often forgotten.
Lizzie, I do congratulate you, but forgive the question. Are you sure you can love him?
Yes, indeed. I must confess that I love him more than I do Bingley.
Lizzie, do be serious.
I do love him more than anyone.
Well, then I have nothing farther to wish. For Mr. Bingley and I could want nothing more. We even discussed the match, but we both considered it to be impossible. But, Lizzie, are you quite sure you can love him? Do anything other than marry without affection?
I promise. I do love him.
Well, I have nothing farther to wish. You shall be as happy as I am. And I will only love you and Mr. Bingley more than I love Mr. Darcy. I must confess I did always like him, first as Mr. Bingley's friend, and now as your husband.
Your father would like to speak with you.
Lizzie, what are you thinking? Are you out of your senses to be accepting this man? Have you not always hated him?
No, indeed, Father. I can assure you of my regard for Mr. Darcy.
Then you are determined to have him. Lizzie, I have given him my consent. Indeed, he is not the sort of man whom I would ever dare refuse anything. But let me advise you to think better of it. You will have rich clothes and finer carriages than even Jane. But do not let me have the grief of being unable to see you respect your partner in life. You know not what isolation that brings about.
Oh, Father, do you have any other objection other than you perceiving of my indifference towards him?
None. We all know him to be a proud and unpleasant sort of man, but that would be nothing if you truly liked him.
Oh, truly, Father, I do love him. I love him. He has no improper pride. He is perfect and amiable.
Then, my dear, he deserves you. And I could not part with you, my Lizzie, to anyone less worthy.
Father.
Well, off you go. 3 daughters wed. Ha! Imagine that. Oh, Lizzie, if any young gentlemen come calling after Mary or Kitty, do send them in, for I am in quite a good mood.
Oh, dear me! Oh, dear Lord! Oh, bless me! What? Lizzie! Oh, I can't believe... Mr. Darcy, Lizzie! Oh, I pray he can overlook it for me having disliking him so much before. What carriages, what jewels, how rich you will be! Oh, 10,000 a year! 2 daughters married! 3 daughters married! Oh, what will I do with myself? Oh, I shall go faint!
With the felicity of love and marriage, here you see our stories come to an end, but not quite the end for the residents of Longbourn and beyond. I shall not rob you of the experience of hearing them to understand the changes and sentiments among our acquaintances.
Mrs. Bennett admired all 3 of her son-in-laws greatly, though perhaps Mr. Wickham was her favorite. Happy was the day that her 2 most deserving daughters were married. One would hope for the sake of her family that with all these marriages and good fortune, it would make her to be sensible, amiable, but however, it did not make a difference as she was excessively silly and occasionally nervous.
Mr. Bennett took great pains to become acquainted with Mr. Darcy, and was soon able to say how quickly he grew in his esteem. He missed his second daughter exceedingly, and his admiration for her drew him from home more often than anything else ever could. He delighted in visiting Pemberley, especially when he was least expected.
Kitty Bennett spent the chief of her time with her 2 elder sisters. In a society so superior to what she had generally known, her improvement was great. And being separated from Lydia's influence, she became less ignorant, less irritable, and less insipid. Years later, she was happily married to a clergyman near Pemberley.
Mary Bennett was the only daughter who remained at home, and she was necessarily drawn from the pursuit of accomplishments by Mrs. Bennett's need for companionship, as she was no longer mortified by comparisons between her sister's beauty and her own. Mary began to enjoy society and mix more with the world.
Before any letter could arrive from Mr. Collins, or any congratulation to Elizabeth from Charlotte, the Collinses arrived at Lucas Lodge. The reason for their sudden journey would soon be evident.
Lady Catherine was so angry when Darcy's marriage was announced that Charlotte, really rejoicing in the match, was anxious to get away till the storm was blown over. The arrival of her friend was a sincere pleasure to Elizabeth, though in the course of their meeting she must sometimes think the pleasure dearly bought, when Mr. Darcy was exposed to all of Mr. Collins' poor behavior. He bore it, however, with amiable composure.
He even complimented Sir William Lucas, as he was complimented on having carried away the brightest jewel in all the country.
Catherine de Bourgh was very indignant as to the marriage of her nephew. She wrote a letter with language so abusive, especially of Elizabeth, that for some time all communication was halted. But after some time, with some persuasion from Elizabeth, Darcy condescended to make some recommendations, and with some resistance from his aunt, she finally consented. She even decided to entertain them at Pemberley, despite the pollution from the mistress.
As for Wickham and Lydia, their characters changed little from the marriage of her sisters. The Wickhams were always moving from place to place in search of a cheap situation, and always spending more than they ought. His affection for her soon sunk into indifference.
Hers lasted a little bit longer, and despite her age and mannerisms, she retained all claims to reputation which her marriage had provided for her. On hearing of the marriage, a letter was received by Elizabeth from Lydia which read, "My dearest Elizabeth, it is a great joy to have you so rich, for I do not think we shall have enough to get by without help."
Miss Caroline Bingley's congratulations to her brother on his approaching marriage were all that was affectionate and insincere. She even wrote to Jane on the occasion to express her delight and repeat all her former professions of regard. Jane was not deceived, but could not help writing her a much kinder letter than she knew was deserved. Miss Bingley was very deeply mortified by Darcy's marriage, but as she thought it advisable, she dropped all her resentment, was fonder than ever of Georgiana, and paid off every arrear of civility to Elizabeth. The joy Miss Georgiana Darcy expressed on receiving similar information was as sincere as her brother's in sending it. 4 sides of paper were insufficient in containing all of her delight and earnest desire of being loved by a sister. Pemberley was now Georgiana's home, and the attachment of the sisters was exactly what Darcy had hoped. Georgiana held the highest opinion in the world of Elizabeth, though at first she was astonished by the teasing and lively manner of which Elizabeth teased Mr. Darcy. By Elizabeth's example, she began to comprehend that a woman had a certain freedom with her husband that a brother would not always allow in a younger sister.
As for the Gardiners, they always remained on the most intimate terms. Both Darcy and Elizabeth loved them very much. They are ever so sensible of the greatest gratitude to the persons who, by bringing Elizabeth to Pemberley, brought them together.
Mr. Bingley and Jane remained at Netherfield only a 12-month. Living so near to her mother was not desirable even to his easy temper or her affectionate heart.
So the darling wish of his sisters was then gratified when he bought an estate in a neighbouring county to Derbyshire. Therefore, Jane and Elizabeth, in addition to every other source of happiness, were within 30 miles of one another.
Darcy and Elizabeth looked forward to the time with delight when they would be removed from the society so little pleasing to either and return to the comfort of Pemberley.
To all her friends and family she writes, "I am the happiest creature in the world." Perhaps others have said so, but none with such justice. I am happier even than Jane. She only smiles, and I laugh. Mr. Darcy sends all the love that he can possibly spare from me, and you are all to come to Pemberley at Christmas time. Yours forever, Elizabeth Darcy.
Say a special thank you to all the family and friends that made this possible, and to all the actors and actresses that basically volunteer their time to be in this performance and to learn lines and to spend many a day and many an hour and many a week in practice. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you really enjoyed it.
Thank you.